looks like Thor finally got himself a legit end credit sequence. I mean, seriously, this is the 14th MCU movie, and up until now, this is what we've gotten from Camp Asgard, right? We've gotten an end credit sequence for Mjolnir. Mjolnir got one. And then Thor does show up for a lame smooch with Jane Foster, but it's so inconsequential that Natalie Portman didn't even show up for it. That's why there's no dialogue in that end credit sequence, because that's actually Chris Hemsworth's real-life wife, Spanish actress Elsa Pataky, who you might recognize, kind of. Blink and you miss her, but she does appear in the Fast and Furious movies, a couple of the last ones. She pals around with Hobbs. But anyway, we're talking about the MCU. It's so far-reaching. But anyway, I'm so happy for Chris Hemsworth because I think this might finally be the Age of Thor, and this is one of the first signs, right? Another being that fantastic video from Comic-Con, Team Thor, which you can see the sensibility from that video, carried over into this end credit sequence, and therefore hopefully also carried into the movie itself. Oh boy, so the first thing I want to do is talk about how much I love this end credit sequence. And I largely love it for Thor. I think his lines are hilarious, which is much better, by the way, than the Team Thor video. I showed that to some friends of mine who go to all the Marvel movies, but they're not comic book fans and they're not hardcore MCU fans. And a lot of the jokes in the Team Thor video went right over their head, which was tragic because Thanos doesn't like to stand up is a hilarious joke. But I blame you, Kevin Feige, for it not playing because you haven't done a good job setting up Thanos. But anyway, I digress. The jokes here were pretty solid and I think have universal appeal. I loved when it started out and Thor said disdainfully, "So Earth has wizards now," right? Like, first of all, that's such a condescending word. I mean, he's a sorcerer, thank you very much, right? But it's like, it's not only like Thor feels like, oh, the ants are pretending they can do magic, right? It's pretty funny considering his comment initially about, magic is just science you don't understand. You think, I guess he feels it's a little bit more of a private club and he doesn't like everyone trying to join in. It's a little bit like in Avengers Age of Ultron when Captain America was able to move Mjolnir a bit, right? Don't encroach on Thor's territory. But anyway, I thought not only was he find it amusing that ants feel that they can do magic, but he was, again, a little threatened by it. So I thought that was hilarious. So I love that line reading. And then when Doctor Strange pulled out all the big vocabulary words and he was like, so if I help you find Odin, you'll take Loki out of here and you'll abscond back to Asgard promptly. And I loved that Thor was like, yes, promptly, and just totally threw in his face his lame vocabulary words. Don't think you're better than me just because you're breaking out the big words. I'll break your face. I loved it. It's just so great. And also, of course, they had the visual gag of, first saying, I don't drink tea, and then that's kind of like how Chris Hemsworth said it. I thought that was great. And then magically getting from Doctor Strange a self-refilling mug of mead, and enjoying it and being able to finish it so quickly. They did the old cutaway, come back, cut back, he's finished it. Now, it's an easy joke. It's a real softball joke, right? You can see it coming a mile away once they start to set it up. But still, Chris Hemsworth and his director, Taika Waititi, deserve the credit for not only hitting that softball, but knocking it out of the park. Now, I really like this more comedic vibe for Thor. All right, so I've talked about what I think of the mid-credit sequence. Now we're going to talk about what it means for the upcoming movie, because that's the whole point of a mid-credit sequence or end-credit sequence, and that's to get you excited about what's coming next, right? So, I really like this earthy rocker vibe is how I would describe it. Love the earth, man, but I'm so cool, right? We've seen that kind of persona before, but not with Thor. And I think it fits really well, not only with the character, but with Chris Hemsworth. Because clearly, I think after all the movies he's made at this point, I think that we can, from our trial and error, right, with Chris Hemsworth, clearly the winners are where he's comedic. So that's just, he's a comedian, case closed. A little bit like John Hamm, right? You might think first looking at him that he's like, oh, he's a dramatic actor. No, he is a comedian. And that's why I think in the past I've said that Joss Whedon has gotten Thor the best. But now it looks like Taika Waititi is going to be able to take the baton from Whedon in the Avengers film, where I think Thor has come off the best so far, and finally do him justice in a solo movie. Because Hemsworth himself has admitted, we've tried Shakespeare, we've tried Game of Thrones, none of it's worked. But he's also said, I do admire what they're doing over there with the Game of Thrones, Guardians of the Galaxies group. Oh, sorry, GOTG and GOT look very similar in my notes. That's what I get for abbreviations. But anyway, he said, I really admire what they're doing over there in Guardians of the Galaxy. And indeed, Thor Ragnarok is going to space, going to traverse the galaxy, right? And it does have a 70s, 80s vibe. I mean, think about it. The cassette in Guardians of the Galaxies, the VHS tape in the Team Thor video. Methinks somebody is peering over James Gunn's shoulder, right? Good thing James Gunn is so secretive. I mean, hopefully Thor Ragnarok doesn't turn out to be just Guardians of the Galaxy on steroids, because it has such heavy hitters. I hope it's its own thing, and I think if it goes full Saturday morning cartoon, which was what the title card says to me, and I made a whole video about that, I hope you'll check it out. I'll put a link down below in the video description. But I'd love to see it go full Saturday morning cartoon, and then I think it can exist in its own. Well, it can coexist with Guardians of the Galaxy. Because think about it. What's the difference between Star-Lord and Thor, right? Very similar. And I suspect they both dance. Okay, so now as everyone knows, because Marvel said it, Taika Waititi directed this mid-credit sequence. But the truth of the matter is, I think he directed it for the movie. I think this is like Ant-Man, where they tease Civil War with an abbreviated cut of a scene from the actual film. Not a huge fan of that. I like a little more forethought to go into my end credit sequences, and for them to be made special just for this use. But I'm not going to complain too much because, again, I liked this end credit sequence, and I'm excited for what it could lead to in Thor Ragnarok and what it means for Thor overall, right? So my feeling is that this is, again, from the actual film. And that's why it maybe seems a little rushed, because it's going to breathe much more when we see it in the actual film. And the reason I feel this way is because we've seen on-set photos of Thor dressed exactly the same as he is in the mid-credit sequence, with Doctor Strange's address on a slip of paper. So he's clearly seeking him out within the context of the film. I doubt he's doubling back, right? He's like, where did I write his address down again? I need some more help. And then also, what's interesting, though, is that on those location photos where we saw Thor with the address for Doctor Strange, Loki was in some of those scenes, and so was homeless Odin. So I have some theories about that that I'll share with you in just a moment. Patience, please. I'm trying not to get too messed up in my notes. There's so much happening. So my feeling is that this whole exchange between Doctor Strange and Thor is early on in the movie and will happen fairly quickly to try kind of square away how they left things with the end of Thor: The Dark World, where Loki, of course, was taking Odin's place, right? I mean, they have a big checklist for Thor Ragnarok. We're going to talk about that too. So they got to get in and out, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, one of the big questions, obviously, when you learn that Doctor Strange is going to be in Thor Ragnarok is, how big is this part? And just like in the teaser for Civil War after Ant-Man, they have Falcon say, I know a guy. And Ant-Man just had a cameo, but it was a pretty big cameo, as we all know. Really, honestly, Ant-Man, he was actually my favorite in the airport sequence, and I thought he did a spectacular job. A real shot in the arm to the MCU. So with Doctor Strange, I would imagine it's going to also be a cameo for a couple of reasons. As I said, they have a checklist. They got to keep moving. And I think it's very easy to wrap this whole situation that's been introduced in the mid-credit sequence, to wrap it up. I mean, think about it. At the end of the mid-credit sequence, they get up and he's like, so if I help you, you'll leave? He'll help them right away. He might just walk into another room and cast a spell, or give them an artifact, or, this is my favorite, he walks outside and points to homeless Odin across the street and says, I pass him every day on my way to coffee, right? No magic required. That would fit perfectly with the comedic tone of Thor Ragnarok. I loves it. So we'll see what they actually do. Oh, and you might be wondering, where's Loki, right? He was in these scenes as well. My feeling is that Loki is either manipulating Thor, which we'll discuss later in the episode, or also maybe Doctor Strange is like, can you wait here while I have a private conversation with your brother? And don't leave Loki alone, because of course there's an Infinity Stone on the premises. And I believe Loki chats, he's online buddies with Thanos. So anyway, oh, who am I kidding? We all know they've talked in person, but it's a long distance. They have to keep in touch somehow. So they're texting buddies, let's say. Oh, OMG Thanos, guess what I just found? Okay, so I'm having a good time with the MCU. So, yes, it would be great. It would be wonderful to see Doctor Strange go to Asgard. I'm sure he'd get a kick out of it. He can compare artifact rooms with Odin's treasure room. Or, as I said in my notes, for Doctor Strange, it's really the Asgardian gift shop. What would I like to take home with me today? But it's not really cost effective to have him in the movie. Also, I mean, we already talked about the narrative problems, but even money-wise, think about it. It's so much cheaper to say, hey, Loki, wait outside so I don't have to fly Tom Hiddleston to the UK where the Doctor Strange sets were built. Let's just fly out Taika Waititi and Chris Hemsworth, do half a day or a day, more likely half a day, shooting on the set. Scott Derrickson can take 5. Cumberbatch can film this really fast, and we'll have it in the can, and you can just sit on it until you shoot the rest of your movie, Taika Waititi. It's a little bit like James Gunn recently shooting all the Stan Lee cameos, four in a day, right? So you can see Marvel is very cost effective, and that's the cost effective way to go. And you get to have Doctor Strange in your movie. I'm betting it's the gag with homeless Odin. We'll see. Now, speaking of Loki, Doctor Strange, I like that he's on his mystical version of the no-fly list, right? But it's hard to imagine Loki coming back to the MCU after Doctor Strange has really turned things up to an 11 in terms of visuals, right? Not only are the visuals extremely well executed, but they're very inventive. And so while Guardians of the Galaxy might be influencing Thor, I really hope that Doctor Strange influences Loki as our favorite Asgardian trickster, right? I mean, in the comics, he has some really cool, inventive, magical shenanigans. I'd love to see that start happening in the movies. Although, to be perfectly honest, with all due respect to Tom Hiddleston, I'm ready for the Kid Loki storyline. Now, speaking of storylines, they got a bunch of them in Thor Ragnarok. Okay, they got to wrap up the Thor: The Dark World situation with Doctor Strange. Then they've got Planet Hulk, where they're going to have Hulk and Thor, because they name dropped Meek, who's also he's one of the gladiators in the Planet Hulk storyline. So they're going to have Hulk and Thor probably be gladiators with Game Master, who's being played by Jeff Goldblum. But then, of course, they also have to handle Hela. So what's Hela doing here, right? My feeling is that it's tying into Thanos, because Thanos, of course, has a crush on Death, and who better to play Death than Hela, who is, the Asgardian version of the devil, right? Totally makes sense. And if you got Cate Blanchett, you use Cate Blanchett as much as you possibly can. And also, Kevin Feige has said that Thor Ragnarok is a very important Phase 3 film, which means Infinity Stones, and it's very close to Avengers Infinity War. In fact, there's just Black Panther before Infinity War hits, and Black Panther has its own checklist. So, of course, also further, weighting this thing towards Infinity Stones is that Thor had an Infinity Stones vision in Avengers: Age of Ultron, and that's the whole starting point for this movie. So, here's what I think. I think that he's investigating his vision, and he's either going to accidentally or be manipulated, potentially by Loki, or maybe Hela, or maybe Loki and Hela together for Thanos, to get some of the Infinity Stones together, because we gotta start compiling these, man. Time's running out. Okay, so I think Thor's going to do some of the heavy legwork as he skips around the cosmos. And don't forget that the Space Stone's already in Asgard, and I suspect that Hela has the Soul Stone, because it controls the dead and the living, but also it corrupts the user, because it constantly hungers for souls. And that sounds like Hela to me, right? It sounds like the perfect fit. So I think that's going to be a big part of Thor Ragnarok. And also, back to that Infinity Stone that Doctor Strange has, don't be surprised if while they're there, Loki or somebody pockets it, right? Because we need it for the upcoming Avengers and Infinity War, and this would be a great way to do it. So basically, Thor Ragnarok might be, not only a buddy movie, but a mission movie to go around collecting up all these colorful stones and bedazzling that gauntlet for Thanos, or at least starting the job. So also, speaking of Infinity Stones, I just recently put up a video with updated information as to where they all are right now, and more information on that Soul Stone and Hela, etc., and the Space Stone. So I hope you'll check it out. There's a link down below in the video description, or you can watch it right now.